And so as part of our reporting, we know exactly how much scope 1 and scope 2 emissions we have. And so that's the main metric, if you will, that we're tracking to make sure that we're meeting this. And that's also the metric that the state tracks. So the goals that they have to get to near zero by 2050, there's some intermediate steps for 2025, 2030, and 2040 that you have to hit that are referenced to a 2004 baseline. And so that's what we use to check that we are on track. Well, it's the state regulations that set the targets, but also that mechanism makes sure that they know what the carbon footprint of each state entity is. And so even if we choose to be faster than what the state requires, we use those metrics to track how we're doing and if we're achieving this. Yes. So are we considering other effects? Yeah, so that's kept in the scope 3 emissions that those fuels may have. We might have several options of procuring a renewable fuel from different sources. And if you do, you get a really detailed spec sheet on how they produce it and what they do. And so you can see a little bit of what those secondary effects are. Um, Ideally, we would like to have a carbon neutral fuel that has no other effects. Unfortunately, that's not available, right? Even for regular, yeah, carbon-based fuel, apart from the carbon that you exhaust when you burn it, there's these secondary effects because the fuel has to be manufactured, has to be transported. If you can produce hydrogen locally or a big solar field and store it in a tank, that would be wonderful, but that's unfortunately not technically available right now. Yes. So have we considered the cost of the building to be able to do that? So we did this a rough back of the envelope calculation what it would cost to do this, and it's in the billions of dollars just because you would have to go into every single building. And so we're taking a mixed approach where we for new buildings and for major renovations, Dell, for example, we put in the HVAC system that has the modern low temperature hot water that we can use effectively. And that's also required by the state through Executive Order 94. And so there we can use electric power to run the grid is green by 2050. So that for the other buildings, we're trying to reuse our infrastructure as much as we can because we have it existed. The great thing is that we own our own power plant. Because we have our own power plant, we can then innovate the production of energy in that power plant, such as renewable. We control what we burn in our power plant, and so we can then or we can use electric heat pump and we can pull some heat out of the sewer that's from the out Amherst, things like that. So we're exploring those options so that for the local use the steam infrastructure while we slowly upgrade the campus whenever we do a renovation and new construction. All right.
Any further questions? Thank you. Round of applause. Yes. Yep. Thanks. Vice Chancellor Perdomo Ahmed and Secretary Beck are now recognized to make an announcement. Sure.
I can just. I'll just say next slide.
Okay.
Right? Is
Yeah.
that cool? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be here. My name is Shelley Perdomo Ahmed, and I serve as Vice Chancellor of Affairs campus life. And I'm here with my colleague, Faculty Senate, Dr. Paik, who we were co-chairs of our campus demonstration policy task force. And so today we're going to do a brief presentation on the charge of the task force, as well as the membership, the main recommendations, the policy recommendations, and also the recommendations for the demonstration response and safety team moving forward, and also methods for increasing awareness. So, thank you. So as you can see, the task force was charged this summer with reviewing demonstrated related policies and guidelines that obviously that included, but were not limited to land use, picketing, and our demonstration guidelines. And part of the charge was also to make recommendations to the appropriate governing body. In addition to that, we examined best practices in higher ed regarding any demonstration-related intervention. We spoke with numerous institutions who also had similar demonstration response and safety teams. And we also talked about, as it says here, the deployment of composition of those teams with a number of different colleagues at different institutions. And finally, the charge was also from best practices to make recommendations on ways that we could increase awareness about the policy, but also the demonstration response and safety team, and of course, how the First Amendment is applied and how our students and community can learn more about the First Amendment and the protections of the First Amendment. Next slide. And so I won't run through the names, but I'm grateful to those of you from the SGA and certainly our graduate student governance and our faculty and staff who helped to be part of this team and advance this important work that we'll be discussing with you today. Next slide. And so the main recommendations, I think I'm stepping into your spot. Let Tony introduce himself and present the other slide. I was just going to go straight through. Go ahead, Tony.
Hi, everyone. So the main recommendations, and I don't have the slides in front of me, are to clarify policy where reasonable interpretations lead to divergent understandings. So two of the policies we looked at were the picketing policy and the land use policy. And the land use policies was last reviewed in 2018, which is not too far back, but there's some language that was a point of contention last year, particularly with respect to the word structure, which is mentioned in the land use policy. There was debate as to what is the structure. Obviously, last year was there was with the tents being put on the campus. There was some debate about whether that condition. So we looked at that question. The second recommendation has to do with strengthening the ability of the administration response and safety team to serve the campus. Its role providing administration-related safety education and DSM. So the main task for this particular area was to really focus on how to de-escalate protests on campus in terms of how administration and protesters interact. The third main recommendation was to defeat the distinct roles of university administrators and UNPD in terms of handling violations of policy and legal acts, respectively. So there was some ambiguity in the, for example, in the Land Use Act, specifically with respect to how to enforce violations of policy. And so we worked on trying to clarify when administrators would be enforcing policy and police in terms of enforcing the law. Next slide. So I'll talk about, I chaired the policies subcommittees, and my Chancellor Ahmed was the chair of the demonstration response subcommittee. So the policy recommendation again focused on work picketing policy and the land use policy. So in the land use policy, we looked at the term structure, which is mentioned a single time in the land use policy. We proposed a definition of structure that was based on the Massachusetts general law. So that's now a proposed language that we're sending to the Chancellor. The second major thing that edited the role of the UMPD in relationship to land use policy. So basically, the way the land use policy was in its current form, there's essentially an or statement. So, like when there's a violation, essentially administrators can be enforcing the policy or UMPD. And so it clarified that policy violations are being handled by administrators, and law violations are being handled by the UMPD. So it's not, so the or statement is essentially removed, and it clarified that hopefully going forward, if it's adopted, that policy issues on campus will be essentially administrative issues. The third edit that we introduced have to do with updating the language related to disruptions, amplified sound. So in the current land use policy, amplified sound wasn't defined. It's just sort of mentioned as amplified sound. So we provided examples of what that might include, for example, the use of bullhorns. And then the last major change is we updated the beginning code. So the beginning code is currently a policy, but it originally was a Senate policy. So it came out of the Senate, I think in 1987. It used to be a campus policy. And I think at some point, some of the parts of the original picking code might have been lost. And there was a key part of that related to identification. So what we suggest is that particular clause be looked at by the Student Affairs University Council, which actually met today and voted the current suggestions. So these will go forward to the chancellor.
Thank you, Tony. Next slide. So as Dr. Peck mentioned, I had the privilege of chairing the Demonstration Response and Safety Team Subcommittee. And so the recommendations that we put forward develop off-ramps that oriented towards de-escalating the potential for conflict. And so many of you may know that the Demonstration Response and Safety Team was created in February of 2024 in consultation with the former SGA and GSG leadership. And part of the conversation that was had was, is there a way that we can engage with the Demonstration Response and Safety Team, or have we have an entity within the university create some group that can engage with our demonstrators and our protesters in an educational way, and certainly minimize any UMPD interaction, right? And so I'm sharing that because that is the purpose of our Demonstration Response and Safety Team. And so part of what was recommended is off-ramps. One of those off-ramps is, of course, in introducing ourselves, but in addition to that, engage in relationship building, right? In terms of, hi, my name is Shelley. What is your name? What are the demands that you want to be addressed at this moment? Engage in opportunities of not only de-escalation, but also conflict resolution and negotiation. And so those are some of the things that we are talking about when it comes to potential off-ramps. Another recommendation was to build a mediation infrastructure. What I can say is that when there have been level of demonstration and protest on this campus in the past, our faculty played a really critical role in helping to mediate, when our students and administrators were not seeing eye to eye. And so part of the recommendation is seeing how we develop a mediation infrastructure. So it's not only de-escalation and being trained, de-escalation, conflict resolution, but also mediation, and seeing how we can utilize some of our faculty who are skilled in mediation to assist us in these efforts. Another recommendation, specify procedures for the identification of demonstrators that are UMass community members. We've got a really great suggestion was to create an advisory council for the Demonstration Response and Safety Team that includes students, faculty, and staff. So I'm convening the subcommittee again so that we can start to develop a charge, and then I'll be following up Colin and SGA leadership to identify, and hopefully some of you will serve on that advisory council for the Demonstration Response and Safety Team. Another recommendation was to actively seek out post-action reports from other universities and review so that we're staying abreast and on top of best practices. And of course, as Dr. mentioned, clarifying the use of law enforcement in relation to legal acts as opposed to policy violations. And so in addition, oh, next slide. Thank you. And some of the things that we worked on to increase awareness for the community and our students is creating a free expression FAQ, frequently asked questions, and we can share that with you all. That we recommend, of course, sharing obviously with the university community. I'll make sure that you have copies of that, and updating our demonstration responses team handouts that we share with our students who are demonstrating or protesting that can be shared as mentioned, and recommending that there is a central website so that all of this information regarding the policy and guidance are easily available to all. So these were the recommendations that were put forward. And any questions? Want to make sure we. So I can, okay. Oh, maybe a mic for.
So does the chancellor get the last word on these recommendations, whether they're put into effect or not?
Great question. I think the last word, or does this have to go to, well, with respect to the demonstration response and safety team subcommittee, and the recommendation put forward, we're going to develop the advisory council, and that advisory council is going to assist us, with a lot of those recommendations. And some of the things are already in effect, right? Like the de-escalation training, the conflict resolution training, right? With respects to the policy recommendations, now that Saul has approved, that goes to the chancellor and administrative team. And is that the final say, or is it another level? I'm not sure.
So the land use policy is a trustee policy.
Right.
So the chancellor can advance it to the trustees for consideration. So I think it would go to CASA, which is one of the trustee subcommittees, for them to look at it. And then if CASA approves it, it would go to the next trustee meeting. I think this is the hope for the picking policy. I think that's the student affairs policy. So that would come to you, and I think it would be appropriate for consultation. Picking policy should be, the Government Association and the GSG consultation opportunity with respect to the picking policy.
That's
So,
where your yep.
Okay, so the chancellor doesn't have the power to.
technically, these are recommendations
Yeah.
to the chancellor because these are in the sort of domain of, a trustee policy. That's we can't change those policies ourselves. The trustees change those policies. So these are recommendations to the chancellor. The picketing policy is administrative policy that the chancellor put on
Oversight for it.
and so that policy is provided in consultation, I think, with SGA and
GSG.
with that part, the student affairs side.
I also have two other questions. Do you want to go first? Okay. So my next question is based on the policy recommendations that you're making and the changes that you're making to the demonstration response and safety team. Was the response to the May 7th encampment justified based on changes? And will that set a precedent for responses going forward?
So let me just say, as I mentioned, the creation of the demonstration response and safety team was at the request of students, right? And I do think that the team is doing a really good job, right? In terms of notifying students when they're violating policy, but also allowing students to protest and demonstrate, I understand that front in mind is May 7th and 8th, but when we're thinking about the demonstration response and safety team, and when we're thinking about policy, we also need to think about other things and other external entities or other protests and things that could happen on our campus. So I understand that there's concern, particularly about what happened with May 7th and May 8th, right? But our hope is that with the clarity that has been, or the recommendations that have been provided, and both at the policy subcommittee level and also at the demonstration response and safety team level, that we are able to engage in processes to de-escalate and address the situation without having to bring UMPD into the situation. So I am hopeful that these changes and these recommendations will have a better impact for our community.
Also, has there been any investigation into the actions of UMPD on that particular night?
So I believe, and I don't know to what extent Colin may have shared, but also the chancellor, my understanding is that there is, oh my goodness, what is his name? Ralph Martin, correct. So Ralph Martin has been having meetings with a number of university constituents, including students and faculty who were arrested. And then Ralph Martin will be developing a report that will be shared with the chancellor with respects to the actions and what happened on May 7th and May 8th. So I think it's broader than UMPD, but yes, an external reviewer has been identified, and they're in the process of collecting data and hopefully finalizing that.
Okay, thank you. And just to clarify here, you are agreeing that the level of police involvement on May 7th does not set a precedent for what the response to campus demonstrations will be in the future.
Can you clarify your question? Am I agreeing, or I'm not sure what your question? Yeah,
I'm asking if that's what you're saying, if you agree with that statement.
Can you clarify the statement? That's what I'm asking.
Yes, that the level of police involvement on
May 7th and May 8th.
Yes, does not set a precedent for future responses to campus demonstrations.
I'm looking forward to reviewing the report, best practices. I'm hoping that it does not.
In the land use policy, the proposed definition of structure is not entirely clear. What entails a structure? What is a fixed location? What types of tents are permissible? As tents are mentioned in the proposed amendment, and there are so many types of tents: big, small, portable, and non-portable. In addition to tents, what types of signs are permitted as structures? Signs are also a part of the definition of structure.
I think that's a great question, and that falls under the purview of Vice Chancellor Andy Mangels and Shane Conklin. And I would love if you can share those questions with us, and we can get those questions to them, and perhaps they can come and make a presentation, share the answers to those beforehand. But yeah, that's I'm not sure, Doctor, if you want to speak to some of those things as you had oversight of the land use policy committee, but the details, the specificity to your question, I don't have all the answers to. So, but Andy Mangels and my colleague Shane.
And I can provide a little bit of information, I think. So the definition that's provided to you there is, previously just that structure, introduce a definition of structure, which is based on Massachusetts law. There's another document that's sort of like what's known as the implementation procedures of the land use policy. It's a campus document. In that document, there's a lot of detail about how things are actually going to be implemented, because this is sort of like a high-level trustee document. So I think the next steps for us would be to start working on that document and detailing like processes for, like, say, how students can and people on campus or off campus can request to put up recreational tents or 2-person tents, 6-person tents. I think they already have a process for large tents. So Saul would be involved in sort of working on those processes and make the provisions in that, and there'll be also consultation related to that sort of detailed policy regulations, as opposed to sort of like high-level policy document.
Saul is the Student Affairs University Life Faculty Committee Subcommittee.
Secretary Merchant.
Can you guys clarify where the proposed definition came from? I know you guys said it was the Massachusetts general law, but I'm interested to know if that was the exact language taken from the Massachusetts general law, was implementation? And is it something that you're open to making changes to?
So I don't remember what particular section of MGL it was. I think originally we had put in reference to MGL so people would see that it was taken pretty much word for word, with one exception. We excluded recreational tramways from the definition because we didn't want people thinking they could build a monorail here. But which I'm excited to have a monorail, but more seriously, yes, it was pretty much pulled down based on the existing definition structure in the law, with the exception of recreational reference. So, as a state institution, we follow the law, so we're subject to Massachusetts general law. So, their definition structure is our definition of structure. That's generally there's order of precedence of law, like federal law supersedes state law supersedes anything on campus.
Follow-up question. The first sentence of the definition says a structure is a combination of materials assembled at a fixed location to give support or shelter. Could you clarify what it means to give support? I feel like that is sort of broad, and how could we prevent that from being used too broadly?
I think that's a good question for
Vice Chancellor for Administration and Finance.
Deals with this all the time. It's constant.
Is there a way that we can get these questions so that we're able to? Thank you.
Vice President Leone.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you. I have like a clarification question and a follow-up question. So today's small meeting, the Student Affairs University Elect Council, that was just the vote that happened on that today was just to say, hey, here are the policies, and that's not implementation. Implementation is a different process, correct?
Recommend.
So under the language policy, there's a specific section that's how to make recommendations to address the policy, and so small is mentioned as the body that can make campus recommendations to the chancellor, and the chancellor can make those recommendations to the trustees. But if the trustees, then there's no change to the policy. Trustees have to vote on it and approve it. The implementation procedures is sort of like I would say administration's power because the Senate's not involved in it, and wasn't involved in administering that policy, but it's basically the campus level interpretation of the land use policy in terms of like you go to this office for this kind of request, you go to this office for another kind of request. But in my opinion, we can revise the document more specific about things like tents and whatnot, because those things are currently mentioned in the implementation procedures.
So my follow-up question would be, how would students kind of be like consulted and involved in that implementation process, if at all?
So the Student Affairs University Council includes 5 members from SGA on it. I think maybe 1 graduate student. So students are in Senate councils. What happens is students are represented on most, if not all, Senate councils, and that's a way of institutionalizing student participation in sort of academic affairs related kinds of policies or campus level policies.
All right, that's all. Thanks.
The picketing code was recently amended to in the picketing code, why is the implied removal of face coverings being implemented? And what would you tell people who are concerned about this provision?
I don't think there's any mention about removal of face coverings in that.
I can provide some context.
Oh, do you have a mic? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I believe what Ronnie was referring to is there had been a note in the final report that did mention that there had been some discussion about an already existing face covering policy, which doesn't just apply to protests, but also applies to like Halloween costumes, for example, on campus. campus. And there was a New York Times article that dropped that had to do with protesters in, particularly in Palestine protests across the country, taking on the trend of covering their faces to avoid being seen by police or being opened up to prosecution. So I think there's been a discussion about that. There's been a discussion about whether our current standing policy is a violation of those students' First Amendment rights. However, if I'm correct, I believe that there already is a separate policy in place that was not acted upon by the task force that's been in place for a while, and students that prohibits the full covering your face. 'Cause I know I've seen at Halloween they always have
Well, that's not policy. That's like guidance. But we had a career fair that had demonstrators, and there was a brother wearing a keffiyeh, and he had every right to be there, and no one said anything, and so yeah, no, that's.
So I think maybe that was confusion because it was in the final report. People were confused that had been put in there.
Clarity.
It's a new thing, but
like references to identification.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's,
so-
it's like one line that just references an article, and that somehow they got confused that there had been a new policy enacted.
Yeah, there's no policy about face coverings, and but certainly one of the things that was discussed was identification,
That's different.
and so that's definitely in there. And so one of the things about the original picketing policy, when it was a second Senate policy, was there was a section on identification. So the task force basically looked at that whole language and introduced it into the current picketing policy. At some point in ancient history, the Senate policy, which became the campus policy, as part of the campus policy, required that SACL develop a student-specific picketing policy. So what we have today is actually the student-specific version of the campus policy. And then I'm not sure what's happened, but basically the campus policy got retracted. But the student-specific policy never had the section on identification. But it was in the original campus policy. So there are different ways to approach identification, right? Obviously, this has been an issue on a lot of campuses. Some campuses have introduced identification policy, right? They're like, I think maybe Harvard is now going to they require people to show identification. Yeah, I don't think that's what we did here. Other ways of identification demanded, for example, I think some people on campus thought the existing student code has terms in it that are consistent with requiring identification. I personally disagreed with that interpretation of the student code. So the language we ended up essentially adopting more sort of specific to that. If we're going to have a distinction between the enforcement of policy violations by administrators and the enforcement of law by police, administrators have to be able to identify students so they can therefore apply, put those students into those sort of policy violation processes. If they can't identify students, there's got to be a different way. So the thought was, I'm not the kind of person, I think other people on the committee want to force people to identify themselves. So the whole language basically was, people are free to not identify themselves, but they won't necessarily be treated like someone from the campus at that point. So that would potentially the law enforcement being more involved in the situation. So that was the solution that the committee came up with for that particular issue.
I think that moving forward, it would just be a good idea to kind of make that more clear to the student body, to the campus community, because I know there was a lot of confusion about that, and there were people who thought a new policy was being implemented, and I did tell people, I was like, no, this is more so just noting the discussion, but I can see why students are confused about that.
Thank you.
With the recommendation, regards to, I guess, to the chancellor, and then if it goes beyond to the board of trustees,
how we can follow along. Yeah.
So, great question. We're going to be, like I mentioned, developing an advisory board, and I'm hoping that there will be members of SGA there. And that's a way to certainly make sure that we are aware in terms of how we're implementing and moving things forward. I have meetings with SGA leadership, GSG leadership, and also develop a website as well.
Also, I think your student trustee it will be at these meetings, not necessarily the cost of the meeting, depending on which student trustee is a member of, but obviously at the full trustee meeting, the student trustee should be there.
In the document, it says that one of the recommendations is to clarify the use of law enforcement in the response. So I'm just kind of wondering what tangible steps have been recommended to clarify this, and also if any actual edits to the use of law enforcement in the process were recommended and discussed at all.
So in our revisions to the land use policy, we essentially removed an or statement where it said basically administrators, uh, administrators dealing with policy violations or UPD. We removed that language. This is me just trying to remember the exact wording, but it's basically that if there's a policy violation, the people that are supposed to deal with the policy violation are administrators, and UMPD is there to deal with law violations. So we try to be much more specific. Got rid of the statement, which I think creates a lot of confusion and maybe latitude in terms of what you can do. So to me, the policy, our recommendations are really saying if there's a policy violation, then it's really administration's job to deal with that policy violation. Some of those policy violations could turn into law violations. If they do, then that's where the police might be involved. The example I would give would be trespassing, right? Let's say there's someone from off campus puts up a tent, without approval. Administrators go out there, they talk to the person, and from our campus, so they're violating the policy. But if they're refusing to the policy, they're probably at that point law in terms of trespassing, right? So that's kind of the logic. So there isn't necessarily a automatic to be involved. It's more of a two-step. First, get involved to figure out the policy violation aspects. Obviously, if there's ever a threat, that's always or a matter of law. Should obviously be covered because our job is also to protect everybody on campus. Have a role in terms of law violations. Violations can occur, hopefully not very frequently, but they can occur very, very quickly.
And we didn't do a deep dive, right? So that's a recommendation. And so, part of the next step would be the implementation, right? So, what is the clarity in terms of use of law enforcement, and I'm also hoping that this report that comes from Martin will be able to shed some light on that as well.
Okay. I think what Colin was kind of alluding to, one of the points he brought up, I'm gonna read like a section, and kind of like asking a question about it. So this section here, because it talks about like the identification concern that people had. If after notice the demonstrators fail to comply with the code, the identification of those in violation will be requested by the duly constituted authority. If those requested to give identification refuse to do so, such refusal will assume that the member is not a member of the UMass community and will be treated as non-campus members without the protection afforded by this code. My question is, can you guys talk a little bit more about like what it means to be treated as a non-campus member and like the ramifications that might have?
So I would definitely think of it in terms of potential trespassing, right? So, and I mean, if you think about it, there are situations where there are individuals on campus that do get trespassed that are not part of, or do not have a tie to the university because they're a potential threat. So that's something the police will do is like, if someone's been determined to be a threat that's not a member of the UMass community, they can get trespassed by the police. So it's sort of along those lines, right? So, if you think about it, if we can't identify the identity of the administration cannot identify the identity of a person, how do we know that person is a member of the community or not? Right. So that's the logic of it. It's not enforcing identification. It just means that
Provide guidance.
if someone declines to provide identification, the administration can't assume that person is from the campus.
Two more questions. Senator Brooker.
When I want to put a folding table by the campus pond to just hang out, like I don't see how you can feasibly enforce this in a viewpoint neutral way, and it seems like you're just kind of unnecessarily restricting normal activities on this campus because there are certain types of behaviors that are unwanted. So I'm just wondering if you could clarify how you enforce this at all.
So these are actually, so the language about the vice chancellor for administration finances, having to get approval from that person, that is actually the existing policy. But the way it's operationalized is that there are designees of that vice chancellor who can make approvals for sort of like putting up. So, for example, putting up a table, there's a process to do that. You wouldn't necessarily change with this definition, also, a definition of structure. And that's all dealt with in the implementation guidelines. So there'll be a chance to review them and see if they're being too arduous, and because they're being too arduous, essentially suppress free speech. Because I think the goal of this is to make sure that the policy defines how the time and place restrictions that you use in place, but create the pathways by which individuals, students, staff, faculty, primarily students, can engage in free expression.
Building on that, I'm also wondering if there's any kind of process to determine if the structure is actually creating any disturbance or harm. It's just completely mundane. And then you're sort of
We do have a process in place that's through emergency health and safety to our colleague Jeff Heshkop. Yeah, but once a land use, there's processes to review being requested, and so yes.
Is this on? Okay. So just to further build upon the question about the role of law enforcement, you specifically say anything breaking the law. I do think that's an incredibly broad definition. So is there any clarity beyond just the document we are given about specific laws, or just if it deviates and it breaks the law enforcement gets involved? Like, are there specific laws, or if someone's littering, call the police? You know what I mean? Because I just think it offers a lot of room to potentially abuse that policy in a different leadership, for example.
So, I mean, what we did was in relationship to this policy. I don't know how administration responds to littering. Like, I can imagine in some situations the police get involved. It's like someone's dumping a refrigerator in the pond. I can imagine.
Versus a piece of gum or something like that. Yeah. It's a bit challenging to answer that question, and I hate to have to continue to go, but I am really looking forward to reviewing that report because it's going to be a comprehensive report where so many different stakeholders were involved in the process. And so perhaps there'll be clarity that comes from that, but you're asking for specificity on the type of laws that, that's quite broad.
Yeah, I guess more so I'm asking, like, in your proposal, will you propose specific ways in which that can be used? Or is it just point blank in your proposal, if something breaks the law, then refer to law enforcement?
So again, the proposed revisions had to do with proposed recommendations had to do with land use policy. So I mean, I guess if you want to think about what those potential laws might be, it's like basically people taking space with and claiming that space. that might be depriving some people of that space. I don't know if there's some laws that could be broken in that situation. Um, yeah, but it kind of varies on the situation. There was a pretty extreme case in University of Chicago. Where there was a faculty member in one of the buildings that was occupied and basically got trapped in that building. Fortunately, I don't think a bunch of people got arrested, but I don't think anyone got arrested for the fact that that faculty member got trapped in her office. But that could have gone sideways from a law perspective.
Thank you. Appreciate your questions. Thank you.
Keep the microphones in the audience. All right. Are there any other announcements? Okay. The minutes from the last Senate meeting were sent out 48 hours prior. Are there any corrections to the minutes? There being no corrections, the minutes stand approved without objection. On to officer reports. The University Student Trustee Oliveira is recognized. Right, President Humphreys is recognized.
Oh, this is awkward. Hold on. Yeah, that might be better. I'm not too good with this mic.
Short mic.
Yeah. Or I'd be like leaning down the whole time.
Right.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. So tonight, in lieu of my normal report out, I'm going to be presenting the executive agenda to you guys, which is part of my constitutional duties. So bear with me for a few minutes. I'll try to go through it as quickly as possible. Good evening. It's an honor to stand before you tonight in order to present the Leone administration's executive agenda for the 2024-2025 academic year. Dale and I ran on a platform of building a better UMass for all students. With this Senate session now in full swing, it is time to begin turning that vision into a reality. First, I would like to address an issue that has been near and dear to my heart since my days as a senator: food security. Our administration secured a major victory this past Monday when campus leadership announced via press release plans to launch a basic needs center in the old location of Newman Catholic Center. I am also excited to announce that the long fight for a dining swipe donation program will begin this semester on October 8th and 9th and on November 12th and 13th. Students will be able to donate swipes on these days using the Get app. The Dean of Students Office is continuing its search for a permanent basic needs director, and I'm honored to announce that I will continue to serve on the search committee for this crucial position. Next, I would like to address the steps being taken to reform the SATF and our internal processes. Later tonight, Secretary of Finance Dylan Bellerive will be presenting to you his plan for a financial. He'll be for his plan for an audit of SATF funds and their usage. The intention of this is to ensure that students' money is being properly utilized with the intention of giving back to students. Additionally, we are in ongoing talks regarding the hiring of an external reviewer to determine how we can improve our processes and promote financial solvency. Student Affairs and Campus Life, or SACL, has offered to provide us with this resource. Later this month, I will begin working alongside Secretary of the Registry, Rania Merchant, to initiate much needed reforms to the new RSO application and approval process. Additionally, we are in the process of creating a shared RSO supply closet where RSOs will be able to lend out supplies for their events, which will allow them to save money. Secretary of University Policy Nick Vitale, Attorney General Darbanga, Vice President Leone, and I begun to engage in discussions with the Dean of Students Office regarding some reforms to the current code of conduct. I'm excited to announce that the Dean of Students Office has agreed to a meeting with us, and we are currently working on preparing our recommendations. The goal of these reforms is to strengthen the rights of students throughout the conduct process. Vice President Leone will speak more to this during his remarks. Attorney General Darbanga is currently leading the administration's efforts to address ongoing housing issues for both on and off campus students. He has already identified the challenges our community is facing and is in the process of forming a task force to develop policy solutions to tackle this pressing issue. Speaking of task forces, Secretary of Diversity Anaya Lambo, Chair of SOCHEC Esther Onyeka, and I are currently in the process of appointing members to the SGA's new DEI task force. Sending out some messages to the group me in the next couple of days regarding senator appointments. I'll also be sending an email so that is on record. The DEI task force will be charged with evaluating the current state of equity and inclusivity on campus and identifying which areas need improvement. And finally, crafting policy solutions to build a more inclusive SGA and campus environment. Additionally, I've been working with Secretary Lambo to prepare for this year's multicultural night event and to launch the upcoming academic year, which should be launched within the next couple, or the application should be launched within the next couple days. Once this new DEI process is completed, we are planning to develop and enact much needed reforms to the process. I would like to congratulate the Secretary of Sustainability, Carol D. Rose, for establishing Wasteless Wednesdays. On October 16th and 23rd, if you bring a reusable mug to any retail cafe on campus, you will get free coffee. Additionally, Secretary D. Rose has been busy relaunching the Student Sustainability Coalition and the Food Recovery Network. I would also like to recognize our administration's effort to support student activists here on campus. We have been pushing campus administration to reform its current policies so that students and community members can demonstrate without having to fear wrongful or adversarial treatment. Additionally, we will continue our push for the Board of Trustees to honor the will of the students and begin the conversation surrounding divestment from manufacturers linked to and to replace those partnerships with life-sustaining career opportunities for our students. Finally, I'm excited to announce we are commencing our efforts to push for a reduction of the financial burden of course materials by advocating for an expansion of open educational resources, or OERs, which are cost-free for our students and instructors. These are just some of the many initiatives that this administration is currently engaged in and will continue to advance throughout this year. I could go on all night about what we are working on, but I recognize that we have business that needs to be done here. Before I close out, I would like to thank my incredible Vice President, Cabinet, and their undersecretaries. We would not be able to take on so many incredible initiatives without their support. Additionally, senators, if anything I have spoken about tonight interests you, I would encourage you to reach out and get involved. Any support we can get will go a long way to make these goals a reality. In just a short amount of time, the Humphreys-Leone administration has already so many great accomplishments to celebrate. Additionally, many of our initiatives are moving full force ahead. I cannot wait to work with each and every one of you to build a better UMass. Finally, I would like to conclude with some words of wisdom. As someone who has served in the Senate for 3 years, this chamber will always have a special place in my heart. I want you to remember that you are in incredibly powerful positions. Each of you has the capacity to make great change. That is why I encourage you to get involved in your committees, introduce resolutions and policy proposals, and participate in the many discussions and debates we will have in this chamber. Remember that even though we're going to have some debates throughout the year, and even though we will have some difficult conversations together, everybody in here is a person. And I believe that all of us, despite our differences in opinion, are all here for the same reason. We all want to make the lives of students better. So please remember, although we can have policy disagreements, I think it is a good thing to discuss those agreements in this forum. I believe that we need to make sure that we are respectful of one another, and that we do not make it personal, take it outside the room, that we avoid harassment of any kind, because ultimately we want this to be a safe space for students to feel that they can express themselves regardless of where they stand on the issues. So please remember that. But most importantly, never stop fighting for what you believe in. Thank you everyone so much, and have a wonderful night.
Vice President Leone is recognized. This is sensitive.
Is it? Okay. All right. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. All right. I don't usually like pre-planned written speeches, but I have a lot of things that I want to touch base over, so I'm doing that. So yeah, welcome everybody. When Cabot was confirmed last semester, I remember I said it's surreal to be up here when I saw everybody lined up actually getting confirmed. Now looking at everybody, I'm like, okay, wow, this is even more surreal. Um, but I'm just happy to be here. That's all. But first, can we get like a round of applause for the fact that starting next year we're gonna have a food pantry right here on campus? This is like a huge deal. Like it is a huge deal. I myself, I grew up homeless, in homeless shelters, right, foster care. I remember myself having to walk with my mother over an hour in the winter to churches like giving free meals to the poor. 1 in 3 college students are food insecure. The fact that we're gonna have a food pantry right here on our campus is a big deal. But to also elaborate on some things that Paul mentioned, one of our biggest initiatives this year is that we're renewing the student code of conduct. Every 5 years, the code is up to revision. We want to use this opportunity to further expand definitions in the code for policies such as disruptive behavior to limit the scope and discretion the student conduct office has when it implements sanctions on students. On top of this, I'm working with Secretary of University Policy Vitaly and Attorney General Darvanga to implement a student's bill of rights when it comes to the conduct process. This will include students' due process rights. This will include students' due process rights clearly defined and how the Student Conduct Office themselves can interact with students navigating the process. This will also include protections for students engaged in peaceful protests and demonstrations. This is a project that I will be spearheaded and taken all year. So we'll be looking for any and everyone that wants to be involved. Say, hey Dale, I want to be involved. Come tell me. I want you guys' help. So President Humphreys has also already touched base a little bit about the housing initiative that Ryan is working on. But to expand on that task force that's implemented, one important thing that Colin and I are working on and trying to explore with Res Life is to change the housing selection process. We have a housing crisis right here at UMass that's pretty much obvious, and it affects marginalized students the most, particularly low-income students. Students that have high financial aid often have their aid cover their housing while attending UMass. If these students are forced to go into downtown Amherst to explore a housing market that is extremely scarce, that the university honestly has helped exacerbate by not making enough accommodations for the trend of students now staying on campus for a plethora of reasons. They won't be able to find housing and will have to take up more debt to afford rents. So this housing crisis is affecting our poor students the most. But another big initiative we want to do this year, on top of pushing for more state aid and stuff like that, is we want to work with the state of Massachusetts to pass the Debt Free Future Act. I'll be working alongside many senators this year, particularly Senator Ella Brown, progress on lowering the cost of college and tuition here at UMass. Tonight, President Humphreys and I are very happy to co-sponsor the resolution in support of the first dollar system for higher education fund in Massachusetts, which changes the way financial aid is calculated. For example, last year, the Board of Trustees, they voted to raise tuition and housing by 5%. And spoiler alert, they're going to continue to raise tuition while we're in an inflation crisis here in the United States. The Board of Trustees in UMass historically do not get as much money from the state as they did just 20 years ago. So what UMass not getting as much state aid as they used to, cost of living skyrocketed, the only other option for UMass to get their money is by raising our tuition. This is also why UMass will continue to enroll students in such high capacities, and why the university has continued to push students off campus despite the trend of more students needing to live on campus for a variety of reasons, such as COVID, more students with disabilities, etc. We recognize the way we address insane tuition hikes and the overall cost of college is by working with student trustee Oliveira, ensuring that, and she voted this, always vote against tuition raises, and also through lobbying the state through policies such as their resolution tonight that will encourage the state to actually fund public colleges like UMass. We already have free community college. Now it's time for free state college. We're going to continue as well to put forth the wishes of the student body, as Colin already mentioned. That includes the referendum question on divestment, in which 63.1% of those who voted in the yesterday spring election voted in favor of UMass divestment from defense contractors from the UMass Foundation. We have a resolution going up next week regarding that. Lastly, I want to talk about what it really means for me to actually be here right now. My father was a mentally ill alcoholic, and my mother, she has her own issues as well. So I lived in homeless shelters with my mother until about ages of 6 to 8 before I went to foster care. And here's some statistics about kids that are in foster care. Only about 3 to 4% of youth who age out of the foster care system in the United States earn a college degree by age 26, compared to about 36% of the general population. Additionally, less than 10% of foster youth who enroll in college complete a degree. The low percentage reflects a barrier foster youth face, such as lack of financial support, housing instability, emotional and psychological challenges, and inconsistent educational experiences. All of these issues we have talked about are personal to me and personal to many people in this room. Everyone in this room right now has had to overcome many obstacles to be where we are right now. I want to simply end this by begging everyone here to fully understand the power of their voice and the power of themselves. The greatest hidden secret of the world is that the world is something that we make and could just as easily make different. I encourage everyone to always see the world, UMass, and society as something that we can all collectively push and shape to become better for all of us. Thank you, everyone. I'm so excited to change UMass this year. I'm so excited to work with Cabinet and all the amazing senators in this room. I'm just so excited to be here and actually hopefully push to make good change. Let's have a revolutionary year.
Thank you, President Humphreys and Vice President Leone, for making your wonderful addresses to the Senate. I'm going to keep mine a little bit brief. My report out is linked to the agenda. I just want to give, once again, my warmest welcome to every single senator in this room. You all worked incredibly hard to be here, and it's just so great to see the enthusiasm that we have this year. I'm really looking forward to working with everyone to make UMass better. And if I just may say something about so Speaker Amaratis, she's having a test, taking a test right now, so I want to wish her the best of luck. But we have our wonderful acting clerk and acting parliamentarian. So thank you, Val and Carol, for taking over. And now so we will move on to Chief Justice. All right. The Residence Hall Association President may be recognized.
How are we? Awesome. My name is Jill, and I'm privileged of serving as RXG president. We recently just held our first general body meeting, and we're looking forward to an incredible year. House councils will be having their first meetings this week, and there's a couple House council clusters that have empty seats, so we highly encourage you to encourage your peers to sign up for these positions alongside the programming board. It's a really fulfilling opportunity to become more closely involved with one's classroom and those community events. Furthermore, the executive board has had meetings since the beginning of the school year, and our biggest priority has been to reform and amend our constitution. Then on, we have a social media that will begin October 8th, and we're looking for residents to decorate their dorm with at least one upcycled item and submit their photos for social media. The RHA Exec Board also plans to host monthly events for our student body, and overall, we're really thrilled to see what we accomplished this year. Thank you.
Any RSO council presidents may be recognized? Any agency representatives may be recognized? Right, on to cabinet. Chief of staff. And cabinet can line up like they normally do.
Hello, everyone. I guess we're going without note tonight. But, my report out has been submitted. Yeah. My report out has been submitted. The only outstanding updates I have for you are that the application for staff has been completed and is out posted on the website, I think, by today, or it already is actually. It's taking a little bit more time because office manager applications have jumped from a whopping 12 to even more whopping 35. I'm still reviewing those, but I can take any questions if you guys have those.
Vice President Leone?
The bike share, yeah.
Great
so
question.
I thought, what is the bike share? So the bike share is a program through SGA in which we lend out bicycles to kind of try to promote equity and transportation across campus. You get to keep the bicycle for a year, tune-ups provided from the SGA in collaboration with the bike co-op. And we're currently trying to change the model a bit so that we're closely collaborating with the bike co-op. That makes more sense for accessibility and for tune-ups. But questions? All right, thank you.
Secretary Bellerive.
Hello, everyone. Sorry I did not get my report out. Bad first week for me, but I've been working on the auditing process, which you'll hear a lot about, so I'll keep it really brief. I've been working on getting my treasurer onboarded. You'll meet her next Senate meeting, hopefully when she gets appointed. And then I had my first student report this morning at PM and UMass discussing their funding processes, possible reforms. And I'm getting added to a larger group of other large schools. Other than that, super excited to work with you all. And if you guys ever want to work with me on anything, as Colin said, please feel free. And yeah, let's have a great year. Any questions?
Secretary Merchant.
Hello, everyone. Happy first Senate meeting. I'm so excited to be here today. Things I've been working on are RSO applications. I received over 70 applications, and I will be releasing final decisions by October 7th. Something else I'm working on is locker allocations. And I'm looking for people to help me with this. I have received over 50 applications, and I'm going to have to go in the student union locker room and label all of these lockers manually. So if you're someone who is interested in giving up an hour or two of your time next week, please email me. Something else is my secretary application is also open. It's open until October 10th, and you can find the link on Instagram. Please apply. It's going to be really fun. It's a paid position and a really good way to be involved in SGA. I was the secretary of the registry last year, and that's kind of how I am here. Yeah, that's about it. If you have any questions, if you want to work with me on a project, please feel free to reach out.
Attorney General Darbanga.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited for you all to be here. This is the first Senate meeting of the year, so I'm very excited. And so essentially, what I did this week is my report's up there, by the way. But essentially, well, not up there, but in the folder. But what I did this week was that I had conversations with Attorney Farrow regarding some policy or the amendments you saw we talked about earlier in the land use policy. Also, I have started the housing task force. I'm still working on that. So if any of you are interested in that of talking about the housing issue that's ongoing on campus, please email me, text me, or give me a phone number. Let me know. More than glad to have any help, especially from the senators. Additionally, me and Secretary DeRose have been working on trash cans initiative on campus to add more trash cans on the campus, as it is a major problem that's been going on for the past few years. So if you're interested in any of that, please again let her or I know. More than happy to help you work with us. So yeah, any questions? No?
What's going on, everybody? What's going on? I also failed to get my report out on time. I'm gonna try to work on that. But yeah, no, pretty much I've been up to getting the student bill of rights up to with Ryan, Colin, and Dale as well. Um, hopefully we're making good progress on that. So hopefully get that moving forward. All that. I've been tabling as well. I'm tabling this week for Carol's sustainability initiative, and then sorry, that's completely blank here. I'll say it next meeting. I'll put my report out. Yeah, no. So right now we're kind of just trying to get like a first draft through, and then we're planning on inviting different RSOs, and then go to the different committees, just get a bunch of different, basically just get different ideas that we might have missed, or people want to take stuff out. Just we're kind of just the early, very planning stages of it. But as it goes on, we're planning on getting more consultation from different groups, and anyone we can essentially. Yeah.
Hello, this is Secretary Heblo speaking. I'm currently in the SBS and DC program, so I'm out there in Washington DC. I'm also Secretary of External Affairs, and right now I'm currently using both my positions to build connections for the SGA. As of right now, I'm currently creating two new positions inside the SGA, one being the uh, Secretary of External Affairs, and also the Associate Secretary of International Services that will help foster and bring more outreach activities on the SGA. I'm currently working with the Attorney General on that. In terms of politics and stuff, a lot of that stuff can kind of be taboo around campus and stuff. It can be sensitive. But if you have any kind of questions about if you're trying to make sense of things and how things are kind of seeing on the outside or even inside of UMass, how that might affect UMass going forward, I would definitely recommend reaching out to me. My email, I believe, is up there. I would love to have conversations with you guys. I've been in the SGA for about 3 years now, and I'm doing basically all types of positions you name it. So just any questions, comments, or concerns you have, just definitely let me know. Thank you.
Secretary Lumbo.
Hi guys, it's finally great to meet you guys. I was here for Senate training, but my report out is not out there. Trying to get better on that. But for this week, basically, I've been working on getting the DIA fund, like up and running, just like President Humphrey said. And this is basically just like a fund that allows RSOs to some funding because when it came to like allocation for budget this year, it wasn't great, and it allows people to get more money for their events and stuff. So that should be out by the end of the week, if I'm not mistaken. And then I'm also working on getting my undersecretary. I have the application closed on Friday, but I'm reviewing everything. My undersecretaries will be here probably next week or the week after. And another thing I'm also working on is doing an event for Latin Heritage Month. It ends on October 15th, so we'll have something in the next 2 weeks. So attend, that'll be great. So that's basically much. That's any questions? No.
All right. Hello, everyone. My report is fairly short. I've just mostly been working on the Senate page and getting that updated with Michael, which has a lot of resources. So hopefully that's out and ready in the next couple of days.
Hi, everyone. Recently, I've been keeping up a lot with the Instagram, with job postings, press releases, as everyone saw a press release today about food pantry, and then just various events on campus. I'm very excited to announce we have 500 new followers on the Instagram since the beginning of September. I also had my first undergraduate education council meeting. And I also recently met with Colin and a few other members of the student government regarding outreach on the federal elections and what we can do to help increase the voter turnout of students on campus. And then we also just started doing takeovers. So those will be happening every Wednesday and Friday as well. And then lastly, I'm pulling together submissions for the newsletter. So if anybody has anything they want to get included in the newsletter, you can send it to my email, SGA Public.
Hi, everyone. It's great to see all the new senators. My name is Carol. I'm the Secretary of Sustainability. Recently, my efforts have been towards reestablishing our Student Sustainability Coalition, and then also recently we've begun putting effort towards, I guess you'd say, reestablishing the Electronics Repair Collective through Makerspace. You can read more details about all of that in my report out on the agenda, but yeah, any questions? Thanks.
Secretary Goodchild. Hi, everyone. I'm Charlie Goodchild. I'm the Secretary of Veterans Affairs. I thought I submitted a report out, but I was checking the agenda, and I guess I must have submitted to the wrong link, so I'm going to try to keep mine brief, but I will also. Okay, so I'm just going to get right into this. I don't want to take too much time. So I've been working on a parking pass initiative for the veteran community. We've had this in previous years, but parking services is switching kind of how they do parking in the garages and all that type of stuff. To be honest, I'm not really sure how they're changing it. All I know is that I was asked to get them a discount, so that's what I've been trying to do, and I'm about 90% done with that. I'm just waiting on one final confirmation from parking services, but like terms and conditions for the discount has been discussed, so that's basically done. I've still been trying to meet with every branch of like military and administration that has to do with my position. I have not heard from Air Force yet, so that's probably what I'm going to work on next week, trying to get a connection and meeting in with them. But this week, I finally got a meeting in with Mac Bachman, who's a very important person in the Student Veteran Resource Center. And I'm discussing getting office hours in at the Student Veteran Resource Center, which is perfect because one of my goals for this position is to build it up and really establish a clear communication line between me and the veteran community. So this is kind of a perfect like grassroots effort. I can stay and have my office hours there, get work done, and also talk to my constituents, which would be awesome. I also attended a veterans event today, the Student Veteran Resource Center, and interacted with a lot of veterans and introduced myself. And that was awesome. And in that, I was requested to look at meal plans for veterans because they do get a 10% discount at a lot of the dining halls, but they don't get a discount for meal plans. So I'm going to try to see what I can do with that. As well, I'm
already starting Veterans Day planning with an individual named Eric, who's at the Student Veteran Resource Center. I've also been assisting the veteran RSO. I was relooking over my bylaws, and there is talks of a veteran RSO in my bylaws. So just because of that, I feel like it's very important that I upload this RSO because I think procedure is important and it also is in my bylaws. So I feel like that's kind of self-explanatory. And as well in my bylaws, there's talks of a better newsletter. I haven't found any uh, like history behind there being a veterans newsletter, so I'm trying to gather content for that and build that up. And then also, I've just been spending a lot of time organizing my information for meetings because I've been meeting with a lot of people, like Veterans Inc., which is a veteran organization that provides aid for veterans. I met with the Dean of Students office to try to get information on what veterans need. I have a contact at Congressman McGovern's office that I'm talking to. I've also been directing veterans who have been contacting me about veteran benefits to someone named Michael Chen, who's the veteran benefits. I can't exactly remember what his position title is, but he handles the benefits of veterans at the administrative level. As well as I've been sitting on my search committees, and that's been a lot of reviewing rubrics at this stage and editing rubrics, what students want on these search committees. I'm on the ombudsman search committee and the dean of library search committee. If anybody's curious, feel free to ask me questions about that. And then also, I wasn't planning on having an undersecretary because I was thinking that a lot of my time this year would be spent like building the position up. But I've actually heard some interest from actually being in the Student Veteran Resource Center that there might be a veteran that might want to be my undersecretary. So because I've been hearing interest, I'm going to focus on also making a undersecretary application. Thank you. Any questions? Anybody have any questions? All right, thank you.
Guys, my name is Kimberly Manyanga. I'm the Secretary of Health and Wellbeing, and it's really nice to see you all. I don't have too much to say that's not in my report, but the biggest thing I've been focusing on is coordinating with the Student Wellbeing Advisory Board and seeing if we can on joint interests. We've been trying to plan something like a focus group to gather student interest and health gaps on campus and see what we can do. Have also been coordinating with UHS to improve medication and abortion services, and we'll put together care packages next week for students. And we have been, in my undersecretaries, planning on how we're going to coordinate with different student groups and organizations to collaborate on joint interest, like different clubs, and seeing how we can collaborate on campaigns and seeing how we can improve resource coordination on campus and student awareness of services. Yeah, if anyone wants to collab on anything, let me know. Thank you.
Any faculty senate representatives may be recognized?
Hi, everybody. So today I am the Student Affairs and University Life Council. As I'm sure you guys might be aware, one of the main concerns that I and the other representatives of SGA had was that the definition of structure that has been added is too vague and leaves it open for the possibility of being arrested in not great contexts. Also, we were a bit concerned about the implementation of what it might look like, and whether or not to punish students who aren't directly in the encampments or aren't directly involved in or directly in the structures or involved in constructing the structures, like people maybe either demonstrating side of that or just attending, the event of some kind. I want to make sure that it's not being used to arrest people wrongfully. Also, we're about the identification policy that's been added to the picketing code. The new policy basically states if a student refuses to identify themselves or an individual, they will be assumed that they are not a member of the campus community, which is very concerning because, as we discussed earlier, one of the reasons students don't want to identify themselves is because they're afraid of being opened up to possibly persecution, prosecution, as well as we've had some instances of doxing taking place, and reasonably we can see why people would be concerned about that. So, any questions?
Any ESO event representatives?
Hello, everybody. I'm up for all three of these. So, but I went to a number of events, so I'm not going to speak a ton on all of them. I'm just going to. I went to the Student Sustainability Coalition that Carol put on. It was a great event with a lot of sustainable organizations here on campus. Kickoff. I met with the last week to talk about sort of how our relationship's going to look and our partnership's going to look over the next year. I went to the Mass Phenom event, which was hosted in partnership with the SGA. I've been to a couple of different UBC events. I went to one of their pizza parties. I also went to some of their freshman orientation events. This isn't in ESO, but the vice president and I have attended the two home UMass football games. Additionally, we have met with the director that was hired over the summer to establish that connection. And I have also worked with several members of SEPA in various food security.
Hi, everyone. My name is Esther. A few weeks ago, I went to the UMass Brotherly Union Health Conversations event. It was a really nice event for a lot of the Black students on campus to talk about some issues that we're facing and just to have like a general consensus of community building. So it was really fun. I just wanted to talk about that. And also, if you're interested in things like that, I'm part of BSU as well. So if you want to talk to me about some things that Black students are doing on campus, I would love to chat.
Hey everyone, I want to share my experience in Student Voices Policy Choices. It was the SGA times Phenom collaboration event in which we had 3 state representatives and a state senator come on. Basically, you had questions about the Different Future Act, about why college is so expensive and stuff like that. And yeah, I'm looking forward to collaborating with Phenom and some of their other events this year to hopefully lower the cost of college. And I also wanted to mention if anyone needs to attend an ESO event on Friday, UPC is doing a blowout, so that should be fun.
Hello again, everyone. Last week I attended Arab Cultural Association in a collaboration on a vigil for Sudan, Congo, Palestine, and Lebanon. Additionally, I believe today and tomorrow, Arab Cultural Association is hosting Bake Sale in the Student Union. So raise funds for Palestine and Lebanon as well. So if you guys are interested, stop by.
You know it. So I've actually been to 3 in about the past week or so. I went to the Academic Affairs Advisory Board. We discussed some revisions to the academic honesty policy. One of the things they're really trying to change is they're trying to encourage more informal resolutions. Basically, what that means is when a professor or an instructor expects a student or suspects the student violated the academic honesty policy, and they're actually renaming it to the academic integrity policy. Essentially, there's 2 ways it can go. They can meet. They're required to meet with the student, and they can either come to an informal resolution, or they could decide to charge the student with academic integrity policy, which goes to a higher office hearing boards. They're trying to create more avenues for these informal resolutions. Another thing that we discussed was the concerns about AI, which has added a whole new wrinkle to the academic integrity policy. Essentially, with these professors using AI detectors on, work, and sometimes technology can be faulty. They are discouraging professors from encouraging students based solely off, an AI detectors as like a means for the charge, because faulty, and that's why the things we're really trying to do is encourage better communication and more of resolutions to hopefully try to prevent, students from potentially being wrongfully charged. Also, coming at future meetings, we're going to be discussion surrounding funding to the UMass Library for open education resources, which professors can use for free, which cuts down on course material costs. Additionally, we are looking to figure out ways that we can increase the number of professors who input what course materials are required for their class and what the costs prior to the semester, so that students, when they select their class prior to course registration, so when students select their classes, they can know if it's something that they'll be able to personally afford. Also went to University Relations SAB. We discussed the food pantry press release that went on Monday. I'm going to talk more about that when I talk about the SACL SAB. We looked at we were shown the strategic plan, which overall the themes themselves look pretty good. The only questions that I did raise is I wanted more about some steps of follow-throughs, and I also wanted to make sure that the information would be communicated with the campus community in a way that people can understand, but also frequently updates people on what steps are being taken as much as possible. For the SACL SAB, which is Student Affairs and Campus Life. So we talked about in the impending code of conduct review, there were 3 minor changes made over the summer, due to changes in law. One of them, however, I would say, one of them, however, was to remove the mandatory cost of the basics program. If you don't know what the basics program, that is the program if you can do it voluntarily, but also if you're charged with an alcohol policy violation, a lot of times they'll refer students to this thing called the basics program, which is sort of like a alcohol education program. Previously, they required a $100 payment if you were charged with if that was one of your sanctions. However, that charge has been dropped. I think it's a great step in the right direction. We talked about the food pantry that's going to be opening up. Kind of as I mentioned before, fall 2025. SGA is going to be involved in the planning process as we get closer to that date. Also, all of the current dean and students office needs resources are going to be centralized there, so you'll be able to go to just one location. We talked about the swipe donation program. Be happening on October 8th and 9th, as well as November 12th and 13th. We're expecting to get a poster about that soon, so sharing that and making sure the students know that they can donate extra meal swipes that day by going into their UMass dining or get at the DET app. And we also talked about the hiring of a basic needs director. Those of you who were here last year know I've been serving on that search committee. The first 2 rounds, unfortunately, were unsuccessful. We did have to give out 2 offers. However, the applicants decided not to take the offer. So basically, what ended up happening is we're now going to a third round, which will start shortly, and hopefully this time we'll be able to get somebody to fill the position. And that position is really going to connect all of the basic needs resources we have here on campus. We talked a bit about the Grayson and Field incident that's been taking place. As some of you guys may know, there was an incident of an individual taking pictures of people while they're showering in the bathroom. UMPD has conducted thorough interviews with students throughout buildings. Campus facilities has installed like a glassing on each of the windows to allow for privacy. And I guess the students have kind of figured out a system like, somebody will take a shower while their friend goes in with them. What's doing that? They're continuing to investigate and try to figure out who it is. They haven't identified anybody as of when we had this meeting. Last thing we talked about was the 2024 elections. For the SGA, I have appointed Secretary of University Policy, Valley, as well as the chair of the Undergraduate Services Committee, Kunda Mizando, to lead our voter drive initiatives. They're both going to be working to coordinate, our voter drive or our efforts in a voter drive, as well as coordinate other groups who want to do voter drives. I'm going to be encouraging to reach out to the library. This was something that came up because they've been doing a lot of stuff surrounding voter drives, so we can really streamline our efforts and make sure that we have as many opportunities as possible for students to register to vote between now and October 26th. It's a deadline here in Massachusetts to register. Then additionally, I'm placing Secretary of Public Relations Abby May in charge of putting different information voting on the Instagram and in our links, as well as having information specifically posted about how to vote, when to vote, when to register by, specifically for Amherst, Massachusetts, so that students know, what your options are for voting, like mail-in ballots and stuff, so that students can be as informed as possible. All of this will be done through a nonpartisan lens because we want all students to be able to. We want all students to have an opportunity to register regardless of their affiliation. Really, it's just about getting out the vote here on campus. So yeah, basically, before I take any questions, I would encourage everybody to attend your SABs, attend your faculty senate councils, and then come and report on them. I really hope to see next time nice thing behind me. As you can see, a lot of the major decisions are made. This is where a lot of the SGA policy proposals that I talked about earlier are being actively deliberated, and we are actively these policies. I highly encourage you guys to attend, participate, and report back. It's super important. Any question on any of those? Charlie, speak about it.
Secretary Goodchild.
Yeah, so they're going to be putting out some specific information, but I believe how many donate. They will specify that when they said they're giving us an answer with the information any day now. I think things finalized. Seeing that it is coming next week, I probably am going to follow up tomorrow just to see where that's at because we want to make sure we get that. Yeah, so basically all swipes that are donated are going to be automatically routed to the Dean of Students Office Supplemental Meal Swipe Program. For context, that's a program that does currently exist, and the Dean of Students Office does purchase a number of swipes every year. And when students come with food security, needs, and they give up to 3 However, as it currently stands, that swipe that program is limited. What the meal swipe donation program is intended to do is it's intended to enhance that program so we can hopefully provide more services and more meals to our students. This is in no way the only solution. I recognize it would probably be unfeasible even with the meal swipe donation program to just give people meals for long periods of time, which is why we're also doing things with the food pantry and the basic needs director. But I think expanding this program will greatly help our students, especially those who may be in emergency situations. And so essentially, though, what students will do is they'll log into their app, they will donate however many swipes they like or however many is allowed, and it'll be automatically transferred over. So students don't have to worry about that part. That's kind of through IT, and then it will be added to that program so that we can provide students in need with more meals. Yeah, so the reason we decided to go with 2, 3, by the way, it's going to happen twice a semester. So there'll be dates in the spring, there'll be dates next fall. That's assuming this succeeds. If for some reason we decide this isn't the right way to go, then we may reevaluate. However, the idea between having two-day periods of time is to really promote the program and hopefully encourage. If we had the program running throughout the entire semester, it would be kind of something that existed. Meanwhile, if we contain it to kind of 2-day periods in the semester, we can really hype up days that between those 48 hours donate spikes. And it might, with the excitement surrounding those dates, that might really increase the amount of students that are also allow us to advertise some specific period of time rather than having it run in the background and students maybe or maybe not knowing about it during the semester. What's up? Yeah, so there is actually they have a whole formula sheet that they're going to be sending along to us. I don't have it off the top of my head right now, but I believe that it was $90 and YCMPs initially. They did revise the plan a bit. I haven't seen the revised version yet. That's supposed to be sent to us, confirmed. But essentially, I know there was they have a formula for each meal plan and each thing and what you can donate, and that's going to be advertised to the student body. Ahead of those. Any other questions? Okay, well, I know you all sick of hearing to me, so I'll get back to Speaker Flanagan.
On to Senate committee reports. Chairs, I ask that you limit your report outs to highlights and additions to your written reports. Chair Rabin is recognized. This thing has some feedback.
Talking to you all. So these past 2 weeks, I've been working on the iClicker program, and for those who don't know what that is, it's just we lend out iClickers for the semester to students who need them, and that's essentially it. But I've been working on that, and the other project I've been working on, which I'm super excited about, is the academic advocacy program. And so essentially, that is going to be a way for it's going to be I'm going to try and compile a list of resources and yeah, just resources that students can access. They feel you know and stuff. That's basically it. Oh yeah, any questions? Yes, I've been working with Farshid about that. We're looking to see if MSOT has any extra iClickers. At the Farshid is the Dean of Undergraduate Services for everyone, and he's sitting back there for everyone who doesn't know him. And any other questions? No?
Hi guys. Everything is in my report. I'm gonna keep it short. I do just want to announce that the first 5 program meeting is going to be happening next Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. in the student union or student government office. So new senators, new officers, even you are more than invited and welcome to come. It'll be run by the Attorney General and I, and we're really, really excited to get to know you guys and to expand bylaw literacy. So that's all I have.
Hey everyone, hope everyone's doing well and having a fun first Senate meeting. I haven't been up much since like the beginning of the semester just because I was busy planning Senate training with Speaker Flanagan and Associate Speaker Baradas. But I do just want to congratulate all elected and appointed senators. I just want to mention this year we had the most competitive application process for Senate vacancies that we've ever seen, at least I've ever seen in the last 3 years that I've served on ODC. I got in touch with the previous chair of ODC and she said she's never seen that as well. So I just want everyone to give the loudest round of applause to all of the appointed senators here. It was very competitive. It was very long. It was really hard for the committee to make a decision, but I'm very confident that all of the people that we've appointed and you guys are doing a great job this year. I'm also going to be working this week on Town Hall, which is happening October 10th. I will be sending out an email with some like outreach efforts and stuff. Golf carts. You guys like have fun riding on golf carts around campus. Uh, be on the lookout your email. Any questions? All right.
Hi, everyone. My report out is up there, so I'm going to keep it really short. It's really just mostly work on the the emergency contraceptive machine in the basement. Other than that, can my committee please come see me right after the Senate? It'll be really quick. I just want to talk about our next meeting. Any questions? No? Okay.
All right.
Right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to your first Senate meeting of the year. I'll keep it brief.
right now, I've mainly been focusing on making sure voter participation for the national election is up and running. We're going to be working a lot on that. That's going to be my main um, point of interest when we come into our first committee meetings. Once committee is started for us officially, then I'll have a lot, there are a lot of things in the works right now. I can't wait to share with all of you guys. So stay on the lookout for that.
Hi everybody. My report is out. I'm in the healing era because I've been uploading 150 RSO application, which is the most RSO application process. So yeah, I'm in my healing era for sure. And I'm working with Secretary of Registry Rania to go through all of it and evaluate fairly. The other thing I'm working on is the overlap process. So I have a team of developer who are doing like an Excel tool things, and we are in the phase of prototyping. And I have meeting with the former chair and also speaker Michael about that, and it's going pretty great. The other thing I'm doing is I'm preparing a PowerPoint for my committee. So look out for that. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Hi everyone, welcome to your first Senate meeting. Like I don't know if I've met my team members or not yet, but my report is pretty much out there, and I've been working with Ways and Means so far, and I'll soon be taking over as a vice chair. So I'm organizing my work, and we've been getting few emergency funding requests slowly. It's been slow, but there have been requests coming in, so this is just what I've been working so far.
They don't like me. No picture of me. First, I'll be quick. First, I just want to congratulate all the new senators for being here, and glad to be here. First meeting of this semester. Just once in a while, I'll come up and give you guys updates on where we stand, especially around hiring that supports a lot of yes. We're about to offer another advisor in the source. So hopefully, she can offer and we can get it to start as soon as possible. We have a really, really good candidate for the associate director for the governance. The hope is that we'll be able to get him on campus within the next 2 weeks, and you guys will have a chance to talk to him and see if he's someone that we should and make an offer to. And lastly, we do have two candidates for the SATF, and that's the people that the person that would be working very closely with Ways and Means and looking at all the budgets and approving all the hours of the folks who works and all this other stuff. So really glad to see that at the end of this hiring process, when I first came in 2 years ago for the folks, we were then with 10 people, and now by the time we're done with this, we'll be have hired at least 9 people. So it's looking pretty good, but we'll have enough resources to help you guys out and help out the episodes. Been really great working with your leadership, and I've worked with a lot of you secretaries and everyone else. So as I stated in the training, my office is back here, 1E. Please come and see me or make an appointment with me. I'm here before 8 at 8:43. So um, looking forward to connecting with all of you. Thanks.
All right. Does there exist a reason to call in the session the committee of the whole? For what reason does there exist to call in the session the committee of the whole? Secretary Bellerive? Audit presentation? That is true. All right. The Senate will stand in recess, and the committee of the whole shall be in session to discuss the audit presentation. Pursuant to Title II, Chapter 31, Section 9, the committee of the whole is called into session. Parliamentary procedure is suspended, and the Senate may not take votes or actions.
Michael. All right. So the audit process, this is something I've been working on for like a month now. Super excited to get this started. You can just go to the next slide. So this is the first audit process, at least since I've been here, and as far as I'm aware. Um, and it is in the my bylaws that I'm allowed to start an audit process. But what is an audit process? So it is a financial examination of the general budgeting and spending practices of ESOs. So basically, just what RSOs are budgeting for and what they end up spending their money on. A risk management solution for the SGA. So any institution that manages money with stakeholders faces litigation and compliance risk for operating. So the auditing is to mitigate that risk because we fund all of these RSOs and we have to make sure that our money is being spent correctly and in line with our policies and university policies, and that all students have fair access to these funds. Okay, why do an auditing process? We have never done one. Why would you do it? Main thing is for maximum because TF, as you know, has been a very contentious topic in recent years. For freshmen who don't know, the SATF student activities trust fund, I should explain that as well. The money that students pay through their student activities fee, that build up and it's on RESOs, agencies, and RSOs. And there has been a lot of tension around that, as there are many RSOs who are being funded at lower and lower amounts in recent years. So the goal of the audit process is to promote smart budget practices among CSOs so they know how to budget correctly and make smarter financial decisions for their ESOs and create just a general knowledge base for them so they understand going forward about the funding processes. Improve SATF allocations and spending, again, addressing my issue I just discussed about the allocations to ESOs and what they're spending it on. Increase efficiency in introducing undergraduate level policy recommendations. And that is just, we'll talk about that later, but after the auditing process, you'll make a report and then suggest policy recommendations to you guys. Yeah, research, reflect, and reform how we spend our money. And then what can we do with the data? So utilization estimates year over year. So that is how much RSOs and agencies are utilizing their funds, just a very baseline, like their utilization rate and how much goes back into the SATF at the end of the year. Information on budgetary inflation year over year. So there has been increasing amounts requested by these ESOs, and that basically means like mainly due to inflation because prices have increased of the goods and because of the larger scope of RSOs, larger attendance and membership, and more RSOs in general. So just tracking how much budgets are being completed each year to see if that trend is continuing and analyze that over time. Provide clear financial data to better advise SGA policy positions. As I discussed, knowing where our money is going, how is it being spent, will be like very foundational in making good policy recommendations in the future. And SATF reform suggestions. So you'll see later this year, and not just me, many other people, that the SATF needs a lot of reform so that this whole audit process is a big part of that, getting the information we need to make those reforms. This is a very complicated graph. They used this last year. I put it here just in case anyone was interested. But basically, we'll take the data and we'll work with Ways and Means to create policy for the SATF, as I just discussed. I'll present the data to you with the auditor, and then you guys will provide feedback to me, and you can also make policy recommendations if you so please. And yeah, and I'll also be enforcing compliance with the guidelines. So that's just the basic of this. Okay, so the procedure and steps. So I will select 40 RSOs, 2 agencies, and the SGA. So that's 20 RSOs and 1 agency per semester, just for now, because I'm only hiring 1 auditor, as is the first year that we're doing this. So I want to put up just low stakes, not to overwhelm me or my auditor or anyone else, and make sure we get it cracked down before we expand. And then it'll be done randomly, and we'll just message them through email. If that doesn't work, we'll submit a written notification. And then examination purchase request. So we will look through the purchase request that they made over the year and compare that to the budget that they initially requested for. So ensuring that financial responsibility is in alignment with the goals of the SGA and the larger student body. The verification process, we will talk with Cycle Finance and cross-reference with the actual database that they use because Campus Pulse and bunch of requests aren't the same as the way the university processes it. And that's a complicated process that I can go into further, but basically it's called Summit. We will use that to back reference what we see in Campus Pulse. And I only get that through Sacramento Finance. I don't really have access to that just internally. And then a current, and then the results. So we'll analyze that, as I said, and we will first, if any violations are found, we'll talk about that later, but there are disciplinary actions, and if a, and then we'll report each semester. We're gonna do a semester-based report, all of those findings that we have, and any recommendations that we get from those findings. Okay, so violations, initially, ineligible line items. So those are either by university policy, so like alcohol, tobacco, drugs. Obviously, you can't buy those with our money. So that is just an inherent violation. And then also ineligible line items in the Ways and Means process, which are in the Ways and Means guidelines in Campus Pulse. I can go that further if anyone would like. Basically, if they are found in violation of any of these ineligible items, there will be a meeting with their advisor and ESO leadership to discuss how this happened because their advisor oversees the purchases they make. So purchase shouldn't be made in the first place. They shouldn't get through that. But next slide. And then just declaring actions. This is if the ESO is found buying things that were not actually budgeted for. So the first violation shall result in a warning set by me and remain on record for 5 years. If they are found in violation a second time with a warning on their record, they will be frozen for the remainder of the fiscal year. That means they will not be able to spend any money for the remainder, and that remains on the record for 5 years. If the third violation is found with a freeze on their record, then a suspension of charter may be instituted by the Secretary of Finance and Registry. That means that the RSO shuts down completely, and that can be done for the remainder of the year, and it can be reopened the next year if the Secretary of Finance and Registry so choose. And then if a fourth, that also remains for 5 years. If a fourth violation is found, then a suspension of charter can be made up to 4 years, again, by the discretion of the Secretary of Finance and Registry. And that, again, means that the RSO would be shut down for however many years they see fit. Questions, comments, concerns? That is the wrong name. Sorry, I'm gonna change that. And then my treasurer. And I will also be saying that I will be hiring an auditor to help with this process. Application goes up tomorrow on rolling basis. Yeah. And then there's also auditing guidelines that will be posted and linked in this presentation. So any questions? Ryan. Well, qualifications, I would say I am just going to look for whoever I think is most passionate about making financial changes to the SGA. I wouldn't say there's any necessary requirements. I'm very, very open to offering training on what is needed. And again, it's a process that I think is relatively, once I train you, it's relatively easy to get a hold of. So I'm not going to say any specific requirements right now. You can look at the application. That's what I will say. So that is a thing I had a lot of discussion about. Mainly, I want to say that last year they started this auditing process and, well, tried to start it and notified the RSOs that it would be starting. And I will be sending out information on it to all RSOs, not finalized. And that's why I started with just warnings. No one's going to be frozen here. I think that would be ridiculous, as no one really knows what this process is. But there is a clause in the auditing guidelines that says that ESOs must communicate with next year's leadership any warnings or features that they may have had, just so that they can be more cautious about spending. I would say that I don't expect there to be many violations, but this is just kind of a precaution because I think it's kind of like our job as the SGA for all RSOs to know that the money that everyone's being allocated is being used fairly. because if there's RSOs who are budgeting for money, they're not buying and they're buying other things, that's unfair to the rest of the RSOs who budget and are spending for what they requested. So I think I think most RSOs, and I have good faith that they are spending on what they budgeted for, is what I would say. Yeah, so it's gonna be year-by-year basis, so I'm going to audit last year's purchases against their budget request for that year. Do we have another one?
I think we can just yeah. My question was if it's just last year's like thing that is going to be audited and like even if it's completely new people in the RSO, they would still get a warning for what the last year's people did.
As of right now, yes. I don't really have a way to go around that. I would say the warning that you have to be cautious with your spending. It's just kind of unfortunately, and they were informed last year that auditing would be a possibility of being done, so they were aware last year when they were making purchases. I just think it is unfortunate, and that's why I put the clause in there that ESO should be communicating with the next year's leadership because I think that is a lot of the problems that arise. But I do understand the concern, but that's just how I.
Thank you for the presentation, Dylan. I'm just curious, what happens with the money already in the account of that RSO if the RSO ends up being suspended, say, for the rest of that fiscal year? Do you guys plan on putting that money back into the big pool and allocate it to other RSOs, or does it just stay there until that RSO is whatever the word is?
So the account will, if it is frozen or suspended, go back like the rest of the fee accounts into the SATF the following year. But if they have revenue, that will stay in the account. So if it's suspended, they have revenue account, that's not going to take away from them. There might be a policy that's proposed to take back inactive RSOs revenue accounts after a certain amount of years, but that's not anything that's in place right now. So as of right now, their revenue accounts will stay intact for the RSO is reconstituted.
So I just wanted to clear this up. A warning for an RSO essentially, what does it exactly mean? So they basically just have a warning and they can still continue on like spending on the budgets. And yeah, so they can continue spending on the budgets where they're just on warning and that's for 5 years. Okay, okay.
Yeah, so a warning literally is just me notifying the ESO that they have been found in violation of the audit of the funding processes. So it will just be a warning. There'll be a track, like a spreadsheet that I will keep in the drive that has every RSO who has a warning on their account or freeze, et cetera, et cetera. But also I want to appeals process. So if the RSO is doing this, they maybe feel that it was some violation of process by maybe an advisor or something like that, there is an appeals process for a warning, freeze, or a suspension that goes through the administrative affairs committee. So I obviously, some things are out of our ESO leaders' control. So I set up the appeals process specifically for that. Any other questions? Cool. Thank you, guys.
Nice job. All right. So, in consultation with Michael, I think everyone's eyes are glazing over, and this is a really dense, wordy presentation. So we're going to table this. I won't bore you tonight. We might do it next week, but I'll introduce it to you. It's a on the document. So you heard me talk about viewpoint neutrality at some training. The other training we do is on the Wellman document. And a lot of new senators heard words like consultation, advisory boards. Where does all that come from? Why is it that the administration is putting students on advisory boards? Why are you being consulted? Well, it's because of the Wellman document. It's a board of trustee document from the 70s that is your foundational document. It provides a way for students to not only be consulted on major policy changes or additions to the university, but also to propose policy changes and additions. And this is a presentation that kind of goes into the weeds on it, and late for a long time, so we won't do it now. I just wanted to flag this for you. And it's also the document itself is included in your bylaws. It's one of the first things, so you can read it yourself, and then we can go over it next week. So maybe that can be your homework. I'm not a professor, but I'm giving homework. Read the Wellman document, and we'll discuss it next week. How's that? All right. Thank you all.
Great. Thanks. Also, the presentation that was just up there is provided to you in the folder that we sent out. So I'd also recommend giving that a look, prepping questions, so we can just fly them. All right. All right. The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. All right. The questions on the motion to adjourn the committee of the whole. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Those abstain say abstain. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. And the committee of the whole, previously called in the session, stands adjourned. All right, we're gonna take a 5-minute recess to stretch. But in 5 minutes, we're gonna get back to business. We're gonna lock in and we're gonna do everything. So the Senate stands in recess. Okay. Ella. Anyone who went to get food? Maybe that's on a 5-minute recess. That's risky. We can wait one more minute. We do. That's a great point. Where did my phone go? No, I did. I definitely did. Oh, it's back there. All right. We now have business casual, Michael. I mean, blazer off, tie off. That's business casual? Polo's business casual. Interesting. Okay. I see. Okay. I guess we're in this weird, a gray area with Western business attire. All right. The Senate will be in order. Let me pull up my stuff here. All right, the Senate will now consider S4. Motion to appoint Clinton Molesky, Ella Prabhakar, Carolus Ibrahim, Liam Rue, and Michael Pastorello to the vacant Senate seats for the class of 2025. Sponsored by Chair Sarna. Chair Sarna, you are recognized for a factual description of the motion.
Hey, everyone. Is it working? Okay, perfect. Just to give everyone an insight into the application process, for all the freshmen here, a lot of times we have vacancies in the Senate seats, which probably your class will have as well if a few people resign. So those vacancies are filled by an interview process. So I put out the application. I don't remember the exact date, but the application was open for, I think, 2 weeks, and the advertisement period was 1 week. I conducted interviews over Zoom. There was also a Google Form application in which applicants were asked to just indicate their interest in SGA. I've shared all of the application materials, including I think I haven't shared the interview minutes, but I can add that to the drive. But yeah, everything else has been shared by me on your email. So if you could just check your email and look at the drive, that'd be awesome. But any questions?
All right. Is there a second for the motion? Okay. Does there exist a need for debate? No indication of a need for debate. The motion is called and the question is on the passage of S4. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Those abstain say abstain. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion is passed. The Senate will now consider S5, motion to appoint Akanksha Sharma, Abigail Lewis, Angel Silverio, Eric Strong, Fatima Jameh, Jill Alia Hercule Espinal, Julia DeMarco, Matt, no. What is it? Lequie. Okay. Oh, that's going to take me some time. Lequie, Tyler Fan, and Wanya Imran to the vacant Senate seats for the class of 2026. Chair Sarna is recognized for a factual description. Do we need to read out each one? Fair enough. All right. Chair Nyeka, could you repeat that? Ooh, 5 through 15. Okay. Is there a second? Okay. Would you like to make a description about it? Fair enough. All right. A motion to block votes S5 through S15 has been moved and seconded. Is there a need for debate on the subsidiary motion? Okay. With no indication of a need for debate, the motion is called and the question on the floor is on the adoption of the subsidiary motion. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Those abstain say abstained. All right. The subsidiary motion is adopted. Yep. Yes. That's correct. That's correct. Yep. Yes. Yeah. If you pass a subsidiary motion, then you pass the motions that it blocks.
I just have a comment to make about. I see the. Yeah. I have a comment to make about S6. No, wait. No. S7, S8. Yeah, S7 and S8. So, which is motion to appoint Adana Ease, Anayaka Pathak, and Ashan Dwivedi to the vacant seats for the class of 2025 as representatives from the class of 2027. So for those of you who are unfamiliar about the wording of that, it basically means that these members are members of the class of 2025. They're members of the class of 2027, so they're sophomores, but they've been reallocated to represent the class of 2025, which is a senior class in the Senate chamber. It doesn't make a difference to like what you'll be doing as a senator, really, but it's just to make sure that there are equitable appointments for each of the classes. Same goes for S8, which is motion to appoint Kithi Wu and Sneha Kumar, the vacant seats for the class of 2025 as representatives of the class of 2026. So you guys are juniors, yes, but you will be representing the class of 2025 in the Senate chamber. Any questions? And we usually just do that because in like if there's like less interest or a less number of applications from the class into which we're reallocating people. Just thought I'd clarify that. But okay, thank you.
Thanks. All righty. The Senate will now consider Resolution 1, a resolution for the reaffirmation of 2024 S64, a resolution to boycott, divest, and sanction and drop the charges of the UMass 57 and subsequent droppings of charges for those arrested during the May 7th, 2024 peaceful protests, sponsored by Senator Prabhakar. The chair will now read the entirety of the motion. Whereas the UMass Amherst Student Government Association University Undergraduate Senate, Senator Prabhakar. Second. All right. Motion to suspend the rules has been moved and seconded. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Those abstain say abstain. All right. The subsidiary motion is adopted. The sponsor is now recognized to make a factual description of the motion.
Hello, everyone. So we are actually, or I'm going to be withdrawing this motion from consideration tonight, and we'll be refiling it next week because of the holiday of Rosh Hashanah. But this motion is basically about divestment.
The Senate will now consider Resolution 2. Let me get that up. A resolution in support of the first dollar system for higher education funding in Massachusetts, sponsored by Senator Prabhakar. The chair will now read the entirety of the motion. I ask that you hold off suspending the rules because it's important to read the motion. All righty. I got to get comfortable here. Whereas UMass Amherst is a public university serving students from a variety of socioeconomic backgrounds and representing an accessible pathway to a quality higher education. And whereas access to higher education is fundamental to individual growth, economic development, and societal progress. And whereas the current burden of student debt on learners is crippling, preventing prospective students from pursuing a higher education and current students from living and learning without undue stress and instability. And whereas the average student debt from attending UMass Amherst is $32,928, and 64% of graduates have debt. And whereas the state of Massachusetts recently approved free community college for all students pursuing their first degree, which has resulted in an increase in community college enrollments and in some cases wait lists. And whereas the capacity of the community college system cannot accommodate the influx of students due to free tuition, exacerbating the need for more affordable public four-year college options in the state. And whereas the current last dollar system is exemplified in the Cherish Act, calculates student contributions based on expected family contribution and part-time minimum wage work, which has significant flaws. 1, it leaves students with substantial financial burdens, often requiring them to take on debt. 2, it disproportionately affects low-income students who may be deterred from pursuing higher education due to... Oh, thank you. Where was I? 3, 2. It disproportionately affects low-income students who may be deterred from pursuing higher education due to perceived costs. 3, fails to account for the full range of expenses associated with attending college, including living costs, books, and supplies. And 4, it perpetuates a system where students from wealthier families have an inherent advantage in accessing higher education. And whereas a first dollar system as proposed in the Debt-Free Future Act aims to eliminate the cost of attendance for all in-state students, recognizing education as a public good and a human right. And whereas the strengths of the first dollar system include 1, providing upfront funding that covers tuition and fees before other aid is applied, allowing students to use other forms of financial aid for living expenses and educational materials. 2, simplifying the financial aid process and providing clarity on the true cost of education from the outset. 3, encouraging enrollment and retention by removing financial barriers, particularly for low-income and first-generation students. And 4, treating all students equally regardless of their families' financial situations. And whereas implementing a first dollar system would increase student disposable income, thereby strengthening local economies and supporting businesses across the Commonwealth. And whereas reducing the financial burden on students allows them to focus more on their studies, potentially improving academic outcome and future career prospects. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the UMass Amherst Undergraduate Student Senate of the Student Government Association strongly supports the implementation of a first dollar system for higher education funding in Massachusetts as proposed in the Debt-Free Future Act. And be it further resolved that the UMass Amherst University Undergraduate Senate of the Student Government Association urges the Massachusetts Legislature and Governor to 1, enact legislation that implements a first dollar system, eliminating the cost of attendance for all in-state students at public colleges and universities in Massachusetts. 2, recognize that this approach treats education as a public good and a human right, ensuring that financial barriers do not prevent qualified students from accessing higher education. 3, acknowledging that a first dollar system would allow students to use other forms of financial aid for living expenses, books, and other education-related costs, reducing overall student debt. 4, considering the long-term economic benefits of a more educated workforce, including increased tax revenues and reduced reliance on social services. And 5, exploring progressive funding mechanisms to support this initiative. And be it further resolved that the UMass Amherst University Undergraduate Senate of the Student Government Association calls upon all Massachusetts residents, town governments, including the City Council of Amherst, educational institutions, and community organizations to advocate for a first dollar system as a means to ensure equal opportunity, economic prosperity, and a stronger, more educated society. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution shall be sent to all members of the Massachusetts House of Representatives and Senate, the Amherst City Council, the UMass Amherst Chancellor, the Massachusetts Board of Higher Education, and the Governor's Office. Sponsored by Senator Prabhakar, Senator Room, Senator Bloom, Chair Sarna, President Humphreys, Vice President Leone, Attorney General Darbanga. All right. The sponsorship is recognized to make a factual description of the motion.
Hi, everyone. I know you've heard a little bit from me tonight, but I really appreciate your attention to this particular resolution, which is very dear to my heart, as I have been working on access to higher education for 2 years now, trying to fight for these legislative policies that make college free for everyone and more affordable for all. Um, so a little bit of background on this. I feel like it's pretty well explained, to be honest, in the resolution. So I want to leave more time for questions. But the one thing that I do want to address is like why would passing a resolution in the SGA do anything? What is this is just a statement. It's not really anything. I just want to address that. So the reason that the student government passing a symbolic resolution like this can have an impact is a couple of things. First of all, it demonstrates to the Massachusetts legislature, the administration of the school, other town governments in this area that this is the sentiment of the student body. So when we go and advocate to the legislature, we can show these types of things saying that the student body actually feels this way. It's not just some random like people that are coming to you and saying please do this. It's actually supported by a greater number of students, and that clause in there that says that we're going to send this to the Massachusetts legislature to other institutions in this area just helps to ensure that they actually see that this is happening. So I want to give it over to some of my other sponsors who want to make some comments.
Well, I'll keep it. Sorry about that. Well, I'll keep it brief, but the cost of college is way too expensive. I believe that education should be something that everyone should be able to access. It's fundamental to being successful in your career and in the workforce. So I think that with that being said, many students struggle to afford higher education institutions. It disproportionately impacts communities of color, especially. So I think it's important that we pass this resolution so that we let the state know that the student body is, sick of these high tuition prices and wants to be able to access a quality education so they can succeed in their careers. What's next?
All right. I wrote a little bit of it's like 1 or 2 minutes, so bear with me. The first dollar model represents a transformative approach to enhancing college accessibility and providing support to low-income students. The objective of free college should not merely focus on making tuition manageable for middle and upper income families, which is frequently the outcome of last dollar models. Instead, it should prioritize those from whom the cost of college remains a substantial obstacle, low-income students. This is where the first dollar model excels. In a first dollar framework, state scholarship funds are allocated to tuition and fees prior to the consideration of federal aid. This enables students from low-income backgrounds to utilize their federal grants for other critical expenses, including books, transportations, housing, and food costs that constitute nearly 80% of the overall expenses associated with attending community college. Last dollar model recipients of Pell Grants often find themselves ineligible for additional state assistance because their tuition is already covered. While this method distributes funding to a larger number of students, it predominantly benefits middle and high income individuals who are more likely to pursue higher education without financial aid. By concentrating solely on tuition, the last dollar model neglects the comprehensive financial demands of attending college, thereby failing to alleviate the financial burdens faced by many low income students. Oregon has acknowledged the limitation of the last dollar programs and has instated a minimum scholarship of $2,000 for eligible students in addition to Pell Grants. Although this represents progress, a fully realized first dollar approach would further ensure that all students, irrespective of their income level, possess the essential financial resources required for their academic success. So I think this resolution is about uplifting people and about equality, and I think everybody should go yes. Thank you.
Um, I'll try not to yap too much. But yeah, building on what everyone else has said, I personally prefer just talking about this not as like first dollar, but also just like we're supporting tuition-free college. No ifs, ands, or buts. Just full stop, eliminating tuition, because that's what's got us into this huge, terrible student debt crisis in the first place. Just justifying the idea that anyone should have to pay for college or it's a public good in most of the developed world. I mean, I keep bringing this up. Denmark has the same population as Massachusetts, isn't even as wealthy, they have free college and we don't. So it's just unconscionable that we've allowed college to become this expensive and have people to spend decades just like paying off debt for something they need to literally have a job. And we're not just speaking in favor of free college. We're speaking in favor of more moderate alternatives, such as people would say, "Oh, well, why don't you just give people more financial aid? Why don't you just give them more grants for the money they need?" Well, again, the problem is that is it's a matter of principle. Why are we expecting people to pay all this money for college in the first place when college should be a public good? And the whole idea is that's better for the economy too. We eliminate so much bureaucracy by just making it free for everyone and eliminating all the means testing. And we also get rich people to buy into it too, because they don't see it as something that's just for poor people. Like, oh, it's just a handout for the poor. It's free for everyone, just how our public schools are free for everyone. So that's why we are trying to get you guys to support tuition-free college, no ifs, ands, or buts, just as a right. Yeah.
Hello. So I'm Matt, new senator. Was not aware I would be speaking, but here I am. I see this bill as one of the more important things that our government could pass. You ask yourself, what is the role of the government? And it is essentially to create a safety net for people to distribute resources in a way that is valuable to that country and in that town. In the United States, we have a lot of money. A lot of that goes to taxes, and a lot of that goes to places that are not beneficial for humanity as a whole. When we give $1 trillion nearly every year to our military for the sole purpose of destroying and killing and ending lives, that is not an objectively good thing for our tax dollars to be going towards. Things such as healthcare, food security, housing security, and education are, without a shadow of a doubt, good objective things for your money to be going towards. There is no reason to oppose your money going towards these sorts of things. A rising tide lifts all boats. This is what our government should be for.
The last thing I want to say real quick is I want to of resolutions, as Ella was kind of pointing to earlier. It's been a long day, guys. Bear with me. But resolutions really do matter. It does have impact. We are urging the entire Massachusetts state legislature to adopt this. Me and Colin, as the executive branch, we signing off on this. If you guys pass this, that's in theory the entire SGA is really behind this. And that holds a lot of weight. We are the flagship campus of Massachusetts. We have 23,000 undergrads. The UMass system has just under 80,000 students. We have power. This has impact. And if we pass this tonight, we send it to the state. It has weight. Student voices matter, and we are the student voices. So I'll pass back to Ella if she has anything to add, and then I guess we'll open it up to other questions.
Yeah, I'd love to take any questions. If anyone wants me to kind of explain what first dollar and last dollar is more, I'd be happy to. Are you pointing at people? I'm doing.
Oh no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Under this model, you cut out about $8,500 for each student that is, in-state tuition from the flagship campus. You propose that we use this find other financial sources in order to maintain the campus as we know it, as well as pay teacher salaries and have the extracurricular program doing that.
So you're saying that the universities are not going to be getting the money? Sure. So, I mean, I can clarify that this doesn't mean that like the universities just don't get the tuition money. It's just that the state is going to be paying it as opposed to individual students. Does that make sense? So the amount of funding that universities will get will stay the same with this model.
To like help answer that question, honestly, like, the thing that really made me realize that this is totally feasible and worth fighting for, because originally I was someone who was like, "Well, like, who's gonna fully pay for that? Shouldn't we make some people just pay 2,000 or 3,000?" And what just made it click for me was our friend Henry Morgan telling me, when people want something and they protest hard enough, the government just finds a way to do it. And that's how we have to treat free college, as something the government just has to do. Because as we've seen, Massachusetts gets $15 billion from the military every year. Like, as we've seen, like, the United States already gives billions to Israel, like, every year. The money is there. It's just a matter of us organizing and mustering the political will to make them use that money for the right things. And of course, like, yes, that becomes its own problem, like, after we pass the debt for the future, because then we have to make sure that, as you said, they use money from the right sources instead of just, for example, putting the load on it on just international students. But that, we just have to continue fighting. But that's just, it'll be totally worth it in the end. And like, as we were just talking about, it is estimated that tuition-free college for all public colleges in Massachusetts would cost about $2 billion, and we actually already basically generated that amount of money from the tax on millionaires that we just passed. We could even get that much money and even more from just taxing like 2% of all the richest private universities in the state. We could have $1 trillion if we just reverse all the decades of corporate tax cuts that have happened. So the money is clearly there. I mean, again, like, we got $15 billion for the military. Literally less than a seventh of that could be used just for tuition-free college. So the money's there. If we just mobilize right and pass stuff and show people the facts, we're gonna get.
Quick word. I what was the? Can you remind me the name of the act which was referenced earlier?
The Debt Free Future Act.
So I believe in that act, there was a source of funding identified. It was a proposed 2.5% tax on the revenue from universities with an endowment of over $1 billion. Those would be private universities such as Harvard, which I believe have upwards of $50 billion endowments, which are essentially just large trust funds, and that's where they get a majority of the funding. It would be taking a 2.5% cut from that revenue annually.
Just to clarify, that is a separate bill. It's not included in the Debt Free Future Act, but it is one funding possibility for the Debt Free Future Act.
I just want to add something, and I really think you should really, from a student perspective, right? So many students, like, not even just in this state, but like let's just talk about the state in general, have to work multiple jobs to sustain their tuition, to sustain their costs of living on campus. The fact of the matter is that if this is passed and this is advocated for through our student government, it can show that we show support to end students' struggle of paying those costs, especially in tuition. So.
Yes.
Take
I said I
questions?
wouldn't yap, but here I am. Like, I feel like one of the things, I feel like another part of this could just be like, oh, well, this is like such a huge monumental piece of legislation. Like, what could we do as like SGA? And I mean, I feel like this is one of the most relevant things to us that we can really make an impact on, because this is like what we live and breathe as students. This is an issue that is like so, I mean, it's so obviously relevant to us, and it's like, the way you get all kinds of like legislation like this going to the state house and eventually passed is you start with grassroots stuff. You start small and then you build your way up, going from town to town, college to college. And eventually, as we get more and more people, more people supporting this, well, then you get it into law in the state house, like what just happened with free community college. Like, that was a years long process, but people didn't give up. We kept on organizing throughout the state, and now we have free community college. So, yeah.
I love this plan, but I have a couple questions just to like further understand it. So what will happen to out of state students and international who want to pursue this university, and where will they go there? And if it becomes like a state thing, like what if you're not a Massachusetts resident or like social security, things like that? And then will the acceptance rate decrease? That's the and if created, will this work for the next incoming like freshmen, or will this like positively affect people who work in college, like who previously are currently attending students be freed from debt. That's on. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, those are really great questions. So I'll try and remember. But for out of state students, unfortunately, this bill is just starting with in-state students. I think there's actually during our forum there was a discussion of maybe changing the definition of in-state students because many people just move here and they actually start paying taxes in Massachusetts, but if they didn't grow up here, they're not considered in-state students. So there has been a discussion of changing that. So if you live here and start paying taxes, you should be able to qualify for in-state tuition. But yeah, this is just starting out with in-state students. I I think that I don't anticipate it having like a huge, and this is my conjecture because obviously I'm not like speak on it necessarily, but I don't anticipate it having huge demographic effects, especially because um, the the amount of tuition being paid to the universities is the same. But I think we're seeing there's a trend currently where universities like UMass are intentionally trying to admit more out of state, especially international students, because they get less financial aid and they have to pay more tuition. And I do see that as like a little bit exploitative, and so I think that you know, this might affect that, but it definitely won't like bar out of state students from attending.
There.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. Okay, so the other part was about like current students. Whenever this passes, it would like apply to the freshman class. Unfortunately, it doesn't do anything to cancel like people's debt. Like, so we're not necessarily going to benefit from it, but I think it's still important. And there's lots of like discussion about federal debt cancellation that we should all get involved in. As
I think we're all aware that the trustees are kind of pocket getting more money and increasing revenue for the greater UMass system. Is there a way that we can implement protections for international and out-of-state students that they're not trying to disproportionately hike their tuition, and also preventing potential caps on enrollment? I would not be surprised if something like this passed. They tried to prevent a certain amount of in-state students and more out-of-state students. And I don't want to take an opportunity for an in-state student or students that are transferring from community colleges to get into UMass, even though this is obviously a great proposition. I wonder about the effects on that.
yeah, so if I understand you right, you're asking about. Can you just repeat the question?
Just like protections on out-of-state and in-state students on enrollment caps and tuition.
So I think that something that's going to be important in conjunction with this is tuition free, so they can't just like make the tuition a lot higher and then make the state pay for that. I think that's a good idea. Also, one of the last year we passed a resolution specifically for the debt relief act. One of the reasons that I'm not proposing that same resolution again is that we're in the beginning of the legislative session, so there's going to be changes to what goes on the table, basically. And this is like in part trying to affect that. So I think that all of these sort of supplemental things can be addressed in different ways. And then the other thing you were saying about um, tuition hikes and oh yeah, the other thing is that I think we should keep in mind that this is something that affects all public universities and colleges in Massachusetts, not just UMass. So we're at UMass Amherst, we see that our like college is ridiculous. You know, there are a lot of people here. It's very crowded, right? But that's not the case at state universities. They're under enrolled, so this could kind of like just even out the enrollment across the whole system. And you know, even if some students don't get into Mass Amherst, they could go to some of the other universities that are also really great. Motion to recognize a member of the public.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to recognize a non-member of the Senate. All those in favor, please signify with an aye. All those opposed, no. Abstentions. Motion is adopted.
Hi, everyone.
everyone. I just wanted to add on to the question of in-state students, out-of-state students, as well as kind of like even though this doesn't benefit us, we have siblings, we have family members who are younger than us, who are in high school, looking to apply to college. Um, and if I could have a minute or two, I'll give you like my little spiel about it. I'm a transfer student. I came here because I was paid a lot in tuition fees, and I had to take out around like 6,000 something in loans, private student loans, because I went to a private institution. My tuition bill after taking out federal unsubsidized subsidized loans was about 4,000 per semester. And when I got here at UMass Amherst, I um, transferred here mainly because of financial reasons, and the bill was almost entirely the same, disregarding the loans I had to take. Obviously, without loans, I'm grateful for that. But it was kind of surprising to me that the tuition bill was still the same. My parents, my mom, after looking at the bill, said that she's going to reconsider enrolling my sister into public college because instead into community college because it was very expensive. So I have like a personal tie to this. Like I want to see my sister. She's a really bright young girl. She's in high school right now. I really want to see her come to this college, have advantages that you and I have, and flourish in an environment that I've been really grateful to be able to enjoy. As for the question on out-of-state students, as a person of us has reiterated, a lot of what UMass is doing right now is over-enrolling international out-of-state students, and that's the reason because like they don't get enough financial aid, they're overcharging them, or a lot of it is like depending on like, these students. If we were to pass this like resolution and have the state look at it, I would expect that these students would be less taken advantage of and would have to pay less absorbent costs in order to go here and get an education. Thank you.
Questions? Any other factual questions? Oh, Chair Trent.
I just have two questions. So, the first one is that I think that by making it exclusive for state students, that gives the university more incentive to increase tuition for out-state and international students. And the second question I would love to ask is, how is that affect the housing price when tuition is free? Is that give them incentive to increase the housing price and just make it like exactly the same price as tuition?
Um,
I appreciate that question. Actually, I also appreciate it, like, because I'm an out-of-state student, so I wouldn't want that to happen to me either. But I feel like just realistically, with policies like this, like, while it's about mitigating what kind of sacrifices we make, I think nonetheless it is about knowing what sacrifices to make. And I think going forward, like with this, and if it in the event that it does pass, I think we really need to fight to make sure that we don't just put the burden on out-of-state students because that's not just, or international students because, I mean, out-of-state and international students like are admitted here not just for their money, but because they bring like different perspectives from around the country and around the world and different ideas and skill sets. So we really want to value that instead of just like trying to use them as cash cow. So I think like policy of like in collaboration with SGA to work with to like fight against them, prevent them from just doing that. Perhaps like having some regulation that prevents them from just keeping the keeping the costs on out of state students. But that's why we were talking about all the different methods of paying for this. The fact that Massachusetts is already one of the wealthiest states in the nation, wealthiest commonwealths in the nation, and that we have all the money we need to pay for this without just keeping the burden on state international students. But I think at the same time, like considering that the university has been over admitting out of state and international students at the expense of in-state students, like it's actually become easier to get in here as an out of state student. Um, like, but that's like literally going against the interests of the people whose parents pay taxes to go here. So even though that's technically against our interests, I do think we need to. This might involve restricting to a degree the amount of international and out of state students we admit. So restricting admission, maybe to a degree, but not increasing the price.
I also just want to point out that like from the university perspective, they're still getting the same amount of money. Like all the tuition money is still going to the university. It's just coming from the student.
I guess the question kind of already got answered, but just to clarify, with this, is there, I'm not familiar with Massachusetts policy regarding public schools. Is there any protection in place for the ratio of in-state students to out-of-state and international students, or would the elimination of in-state tuition lead to more enrollment of out-of-state and international students and less enrollment of from Massachusetts?
Actually, a really great point. There are protections against that. They have to admit, like, I don't know what it is exactly, but a majority of in-state students. Also, the community college transfer is a thing. Like, there's policies in place to ensure pathways from 2-year to 4-year college. So that also favors in-state students. Yeah.
Yeah, originally I just wanted clarification on like the pricing and like where the money would go, but you kind of already answered that. I kind of just wanted to like emphasize it that it would be money coming from the state and it wouldn't just be free. Um, so I think it's still worth looking into just because it's coming from our taxes and it's going to be seen as a service rather than something that people should be paying for out of their own pocket, like the postal service and agencies. It's just a thing that we pay for and built into our economy and into our system.
You doing one more question. All right.
Could I be more of a expansion on an answer of something on how we're paying for it?
Sure.
Just in addition to all the different ways we can finance tuition-free college from Massachusetts, considering it's only $2 billion, and we could get $1 billion from reversing corporate tax cuts, $2 billion from just taxing 2% of Harvard and Amherst College and all of the super rich universities. It would also just be way more efficient for our state by having just tuition-free college for everyone, because then we could just repurpose financial aid. Like we spend about almost $400 million on financial aid every year, and that's like a fifth of the total cost it would be to just make college free for everyone. So like, that's just another way of like, it would just be repurposing money and just making things way more convenient and way more efficient too. So,
I just want to clarify that what this bill comes down to is where do you want the bill for your college to come from? Currently, it's coming from your pocket if you're in state in Massachusetts. This would make it so that it comes from tax dollars paid by everybody. There are protections in place, as we've mentioned, for the ratio of in-state to out-of-state. The only thing that changes is the government now covers your tuition. So the question is not, would this be a good thing for in-state students? It's, do you support our government supporting college education?
Thank you. Is there a second for the resolution?
Motion to amend this resolution based on the suggestions I have here.
Yeah, as your factual description of the motion.
Okay, so these are very small changes, guys. Just bear with me. The number one comment that I got when I was doing consultation was like, how is the state going to pay for it? So I decided to put in a whereas statement on that, which is things that people have already mentioned, including fair share amendment, which is the millionaire's tax. The millionaire's tax that was passed through the ballot in 2022, and the private college endowment tax. So that is that one. The second edit is just this point. I amended it. It said it fails to account for a full range of expenses, and now it says it may fail because some of the last dollar programs do consider other costs, but there just isn't like there isn't a reliable way to actually calculate those costs, so it ends up being very unreliable. And then lastly, this whereas statement is just calling back to last spring when we passed a very similar resolution supporting the Debt for Future Act and the endowment tax. Oh, and the last one is our sponsors. Some people decided to come on and sponsor this resolution after it was added to the agenda.
For future reference, adding sponsorship does not need an amendment, a motion to amend.
Well, if anyone wants to sponsor, you guys can jump Yeah. Just put it wherever. Anyone else? Oh my gosh, yes. You guys get your first sponsorships of the year.
Lovely name cards. Exactly. Yeah. And full names, electoral district, committee. It's just it's beautiful. If I may say. This
You guys bring your placards up to me and I'll just do it while you're voting.
Yeah, I wonder if there would be a better way to do this.
If I just take the placards, I can do it.
Okay. Right. Okay, yeah, we'll just compile the placards. We could probably keep them up here too, as this is the last motion. I think we can proceed with voting. The sponsorship will be updated for the record. And so are there any questions about the amendments? Any factual questions for the sponsor of the subsidiary motion? All right, is there a second for the subsidiary motion to amend? All right, is there a need for debate? Okay. With no indication of a need for debate, the motion is called and the question is on the adoption of the motion to amend. All those in favor, please signify with an aye. All those opposed say no. Oh, no. All those abstain say abstain. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion to amend is adopted. That was to amend. This is the vote to pass the motion. I mean, it's yes, quite an accomplishment to pass an amendment. All right, it has already been seconded. Is there a need for debate on the resolution in its current state? All righty. Those in favor of passing the motion, which is resolution 2, please signify with an aye. All those opposed say no. All those abstain say abstain. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the resolution is passed. Congratulations. Are there any other motions on the floor except a motion to adjourn? All right, thank you. The acting clerk will take roll call. I'll take roll call. Just give me 1 second here, guys.